My name's Matt, and this is Lessons I've Learned. I sat down with Antonio and we discussed a little bit of his family history, what it's like to play basketball in college, and what happens when you have dreams and aspirations, and then life throws you a curveball and you've got to change your plans. On today's episode, I have public speaker and owner of Basketball Drills and Life Skills and Life Direction and Motivation for Millennials, Antonio Ross. Antonio, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well as well. Absolutely. Thanks you for joining me. We're like at the sort of end of December. This is going to be like in the beginning of January, sometime around then, whenever this is going to premiere. But sort of closing out the year, so that's exciting. It's always sort of nice to like reflect back and sort of take in stuff. And I feel like this year there's been a lot to take in.
Yeah, to say the least, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
As we are sort of in December, what is the best Christmas present you have ever gotten, or the one that sort of stands out the most in your mind?
Okay. Geez, that's a good question. The best Christmas present I don't really get that many great Christmas presents. I'm just put that out there. Maybe my family can see it and step up a little bit. But probably, all right, the best Christmas present, I got it around Christmas. I don't think it was really a present, but I got it and I still have it, is I got a copy of like my grandpa's book that he wrote. Like, he wrote several books, but there's one about like our family history. And he gave it to me like in high school. And it's just the memos. It's not hard copies or anything. It's just the beginning level. And I just started reading it this year during pandemic COVID hangout at the house time. And it tells me everything about my grandma and where we came from. It goes back to like Tulsa Race Riot and beyond.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a gift, and it was in my closet for years, and I pulled it out, wiped it off today, not today, but this year. And I learned so much about my roots. I'm kind of like my grandma. And I was like, what? That's crazy. I never really met grandma, but okay, I like her. So that would be my best gift.
That's awesome. Is it something that was sort of written for public consumption, or was it written for people within the family to learn more about the family?
I think it was initially for public, but after reading it, I'm like, these are like family secrets. And like my grandpa, he was a congressman at one point, and he did a lot for Tulsa. So I don't know if he necessarily want it to be public, because there's a lot of it. Like it's a pretty, yeah, it's vivid. He was a historian, so he gives a lot of details on like Indians and things like that, and policies that happen. So for me, I would much rather keep it in the family. But I'm sure a lot of people will want to read it. So I'm not sure really his desires on it. The family, I think they want to make it public, but I don't know how many of them actually read through the entire book. So I like it whether it's published or not. I just like it as a part of the family. Like, it's probably my most valued possession right now.
For sure. What's the earliest account, and then what's the most recent account?
So the earliest account was 1923, I think. But he goes back a little further, but he's not very knowledgeable in that area, I think. So it's like, so have you ever heard of the Tulsa Race Riot before?
Yeah.
So when he was in Congress, like that was his thesis. Like he brought that to life. Got it. Before anybody was talking about it. And so in the book, it kind of starts like right after that. It's like, well, so what happened after that? Like, what happened? And it talks about moving to territories and Indian territories and how those worked, and it broke everything down. And then so about 1923 when it started, and when it ended, it was, I think it was right, I would say it was right after he exited Congress, and that was like 2005, I want to say, because he talks about his accolades and what he accomplished and things like that. So, but I have not completed the entire book. It's an interesting read. It's a lot of details in there. Let's just say that, lots and lots of details. It's kind of hard to read when you start reading the history of like the Indian territories and just the way they was treated. I knew they were treated a certain way, but I didn't know those exact actions that were placed against them,
For
and it
sure.
was just so much that I gotta like take breaks. Like, okay, I'm not gonna read this for a little while.
So you grew up in Tulsa and you went to high school in Tulsa,
Yes, sir.
and then after that you went to UCO. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
After high school, I went to a junior college
Okay.
in northeastern Oklahoma. It's called NEO A&M,
Okay.
and I played and studied there for 2 years, and then I transferred out to UCO right after that, and
Okay.
I've been there ever since.
Very cool. And you, so you played basketball then. When did you start playing basketball?
Interesting story right there. I was always like the fat kid and the uncoordinated kid, and I had a lot of disabilities, stuttering, and I was in basketball, but I didn't like the running so much.
Hmm.
And I remember my dad took me out of it in about the 6th grade, and he forced me to play with older and better kids, which was just a tough summer. But I became a lot better, so I started to be more invested in basketball about, what year is that, 2008? So I would have been like 15 or 16. No, sorry, 2004, 15, 16-ish. That was when I first started like taking the series, and
Hmm.
then I became a really good player, honestly, for such a late start.
As you started to progress through college doing basketball, like what are the differences when you're doing it in high school versus when you're doing it in college? Like are you just having to train more, or is there other things outside of that?
Dude, high school and college is two different worlds, like completely. High school is more like sports or leisure, unless you're one of the top tier players and you've been recruited. So you're going to work a lot harder on your game, depending on who you have around you that's going to push you. It's a really big determinant factor on where you're going to go. And since I was a late bloomer, high school was leisure. It was fun. It was a social life. Uh, I went to Union High School, so that's a school that they have a lot of different opportunities. They have a lot of different resources. So it was like a D1 college there, but you just got to go to school from 8 to 6, including practice. Then I get to college, and college is a whole nother ballgame because no one really never told me about you don't have to go to class, or, you have 3 classes a week, maybe 2, sometimes 1. And you're like, what? Hold the phone here. And then, of course, you get to live by yourself. It's that responsibility thing that
Absolutely.
we all have to deal with. Just on top of being an athlete, it's the way you conduct yourself. Like, you can't be, drinking beer or smoking weed in front of the camera and then go on and play. That's not what the coach wants. Bad publicity. But like, you have to know how to discipline yourself, because a lot of people want to hang out with you. I don't care what level you're at, where those people you don't need to be around necessarily, because they won't suffer the consequences that you would if we got in trouble.
Right.
So college, definitely a lot more responsibility in terms of like socializing. And then you have to get out and regenerate your socialization. And athletics is tough because it's a lot more training. It's like 6 a.m. workouts. Then you got a team practice. Then you got to watch film. And then you do with what you do with yourself and with your teammates. So that was something to get adjusted to. And I'm more of like an academic type guy. And you don't really see that in athletics. So a lot of my teammates were saying things like, man, I wish we could just come and play basketball and not go to class. And I'm like, that's called the NBA, like, we are not in the NBA, bro. But like, you literally, like, if you didn't come to practice, they'll send a coach to knock on your door and get you behind up and let's go. Like, it's really like you're like a pro athlete at that point, because you
Got it.
have to be at places.
What was your favorite class that you've taken in your entire time in your school career?
Dang, that's a tough question. Favorite class? Can you give me like
Or not necessarily favorite class, but do you have like a specific, like, do you like arts classes, or do you like science classes or math classes? Like, is there a type
okay.
of class that you like most?
Uh, Younger years, like elementary school, was math. I used to
Okay.
love that a lot. When I got to college, well, no, I'll give you high school. High school was acting. That was a lot of
Okay.
fun.
Very cool.
And throughout college, my favorite class, okay, research is the worst class in my it was the worst class on my curriculum sheet, but I loved my research class. Like I learned so much, and it sent me to grad school and all that. It was one of the toughest ones because you had to go through statistics and you got to know how to
Mhm.
break it down, and then you have to know how to work the metrics and all this stuff. But a part of my personality is achievement. So I had a lot of opportunity to like go to conferences and present research and work with different populations to then go make research on it, then go present the research. And it just like it taught me a lot. I mean, I still got stuff online from
Mhm.
those classes. So I would say, and then the teacher is all about the teacher
For
sometimes, I
sure.
guess. She was considered to be a dragon. Everyone was like, dude, she breathes fire. And when she walks, she leaves a footprint. And then I go there and she was like the sweetest lady in the world. Like she was so nice and
For sure.
delicate. And then I started like working for her as like a researcher and I
Mhm.
learned that dragon side of it. But that's how you grow. Like that's how we
Absolutely.
develop and improve is you kind of need somebody to call you out for your BS. And if you can, respect them and follow up and not take it personal, you can go far. If she was the
Absolutely.
only person that would like really stand up to me firmly and consistently. Like, being an athlete, you can kind of like make it work but nah, nah, she did not allow that.
Is it so you sort of having that athlete side um, perspective of what it's like sort of being a college athlete, is it like how true is that sort of trope of people that are there on this scholarship and they're not taking it seriously? Like, is that something that is a big thing,
Yeah,
or do
I
you
would
feel
say
like it's sort
so.
of overplayed?
I mean, it depends where you go, first and
Mhm.
foremost. But I
For
think
sure.
if you looked at from where I'm from a basketball team of about 20 people. So, there were a lot of people that didn't take it serious. In fact, on my NEL team, there was only two guys that graduated, two guys, and one was from Brazil, and the other one was me.
Hmm.
And we came in with 10 other people in our class. No one else graduated. Only three of those guys moved on to a 4-year college.
Got it.
So I definitely think uh, they don't take it serious, but on that same branch, I think there's a lot more you can look at in terms of like what education background they have. Like,
Absolutely.
why would they take it serious if they struggle with reading or math, and they don't want to really show that because masculinity say, or the world's version of masculinity say, let's not show that. So instead, they rather ignore that and try to like slip in. And then you guys ask too, like how many people's parents are involved in like their educational progression, and if your parent isn't really in that realm where they're thinking about that and they've been through something similar to that, it's kind of hard to put those expectations on you or even know how to help you follow through with them. So a lot of athletes, I mean, speaking from a minority standpoint, you go in there, you go blind. Like you're like, what is this? Like I take chemistry like 4 times, dude, to get through it. And I still don't get why I even took it 4 times, but I think it was just that achievement challenge thing. Like I can do this, I can do this. But I don't think a lot of people would do that. And with athletes, yeah, I think a lot of them don't take it serious, but I think there's a lot more behind the reasons why they don't take it serious. Does it
How
make sense?
common, yeah, how common do you think it is that somebody who is a college athlete is sort of having a big like internal struggle with something, whether it be a home life or whether it be something like a reading situation or something like that, but they're not expressing it because of the stigma that's associated with expressing having this problem? Like, do you think that that's something that is more common than people would think about?
I think so. I think that's very common in athletics, and you got to think about it. Like if you're playing in college, you were one of the top tier athletes in high school, probably. No matter what school, you were one of the better players, so you get to go to the next level. Especially if it's like a big D1 school, you were really really good. And what you'll see there is coaches and teachers making sure that kid is eligible. Like and even if you're not eligible, sometimes they will still allow you to play, especially if you're that guy. Like we need you because that's
Right.
how good some players are. It's just like, whoa, we need you. So yeah, this coach is looking out for his own agenda, of course. But as a kid, because it happened to me at once upon a time, as a kid, you're looking at it more like clout, more like I don't have to do nothing. Like, yeah. And no one's really following up. If it wasn't for my dad following up with me with a lot of things, I don't really know exactly how I would be shaped and formed because he's a stickler on that with me. Like, hey, grades, hey, your grades, your grades, your grades. And there was times where certain things happened the way I just described it. So when you take that element, then those kids transition to college, they're coming in with a lot of ego, a lot of like false confidence in a sense. And they feel like no matter what, like they're indestructible and they'll be fine because I'm good enough for coach to figure it out. Not saying all of them are like that, but I do think a lot of them are. I know I was at some point, and you kind of got to get humble to take it serious. Or some of them, like, I'm okay with admitting that I'm like humiliated, or I'm down, or I'm sad. Like, I'm really good at expressing my feelings, but I think the common that masculinity part is to act like, be stoic, be the tough guy. Like you're the man. Don't cry for girls. Like that type of ideology kind of, it doesn't benefit, if we're talking athletes, it doesn't benefit that athlete when he gets there because he's going to need help. He's going to need someone to give him constructive criticism. And it's hard to get constructive criticism when you're used to being praised. And then most of them don't want to start nothing new if they're not good at it. Like they think they're supposed to be good at everything. I'm like, no, dude, you're supposed to suck at first. Like you're gonna probably suck a lot at it. Like just be okay with that.
What's the earliest that you can know, or that people start to get contracts, or not contracts?
Like contracts.
Yeah.
So the earliest day is like freshman year, 8th grade year. But with the social media world, it's a lot.
Freshman year of high school?
Yeah, like, but this is for college. Sorry. This is for college.
Okay.
Because college coaches are going to recruit you. If you're in the right, like if you're playing summer ball. So the most important part of basketball, if you want to go far, is summer ball, not high school ball.
Okay.
Because you go to the Thunder Arena, and they're hosting a tournament there. So while those teams are playing, there'll be a section, maybe 2 sections, full of coaches, college coaches. And if it's like a Nike type thing where you're picking a top 50 teams in America, then the coaches want to be there because this is like the best players in America. And then they just go back and forth. So if they can catch you before you hit the 9th grade, they're trying to get you here. If you're like rated 1 through 20, they're trying to get you ASAP to pay out one, especially the smaller schools. NBA projections are a lot different though. Like, I think that's more so who you're around. Like you look at LeBron James' son, he's projected to go to the NBA, but look who his dad is. If he didn't have his dad, he's not just like this phenomenal, like, whoa, his dad would dominate him at the same age.
Got it.
Play. So NBA wise, it's more so senior year. Generally, people can predict it if he's like a 6'6", but they want to see how you transition to college. But the trends that started like 2 years ago is a lot of high school guys, they're going pro. So they're going to go play in Europe and Spain. So they're like prepping themselves, or the NBA is allowing them to go to a semi-league. So instead of going to the NBA league, if you're like a top prospect, you can go play for the Thunder. What's the name of Thunder's semi-pro? The Blue, Oklahoma Blue. You know what I'm talking about?
I know.
So the Thunder had their pro players, their main, the TV players.
Right.
Then they have like a farm of players where they're like trying to develop them, trying to see if they can be a good player. They play similarly to the NBA. They have seasons, they travel, they play, but it's like the NBA is working on let's say they're working on a per team a $50 million budget. So they're flying, getting the top amenities. The G League is probably working on $1 million budget.
And the G League is that blue team that you were talking about. Is that a common thing for these NBA teams to have like a team underneath them?
It's like they're forming players. Like they're
got it. Got
Like
it.
it's like yeah, they're just working them through. And then the last 3 years I've seen three of them go up. One guy just like signed for a really big contract.
Got it. So you can go from that smaller team up into the actual Thunder itself.
Yeah, yeah. If
Got
your
it.
numbers suggest that, like if you're playing at a high level, like Alex, what's his name? Alex Krasingo or something like that. I'll
Okay.
just totally. He plays for the Lakers.
Okay.
He's like he's a high flying guy. I didn't think he was that good, to be honest with you, but he originally came from the Oklahoma Blue, and I watched him
Okay.
play.
Got it.
And now he's like a seventh, eighth man on the Lakers, and he just won a championship. And he's one of the more popular players. Everybody love him. I love him. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah. And it's generally like you look at the NCAA, they're having a lot of backlash with athletes wanting to get paid for their name rights. Like, can we brand ourselves? I mean, I think they should have those rights. Like, is their name? And if they can learn how to maybe do entrepreneurial type
Mhm.
things, those athletic skills transition really well in entrepreneurship. Like the way you can like talk, especially as a basketball player. I'm speaking on the behalf of basketball players. I think it's different if you got to wear a helmet and there's
Mhm.
100 of you guys versus
Mhm.
if you don't have a helmet on and there's only 15 of you guys. You're kind of used to like talking to people and doing certain very casual, polite type things with people versus like staying in your own little zone where I feel like if they could develop ways of entrepreneurship in school, then it'll help. But the NCAA, they don't really like that so much. So, like, so you question what do these athletes do? Like, wonder if you don't graduate college.
Right.
You just went to Stanford for 4 years. You got like 20, 30 hours left. Can you pay for Stanford for another couple semesters? You
Right.
know, like really though, because you burned off these because it's parties, it's a lot of distractions there.
For sure. What would you say? Um, what would you say was your biggest like distraction or challenge that you found as you were going through college?
Balancing it all out, really, because you got your like I said, I'm a nerdy guy, so I really like academics, and being different probably was the hardest part because my teammates really wasn't like me.
Hmm.
Like, so, but I don't want to go play because they're playing on Saturday. Oh, coach said we don't have to come. I'm gonna just stay here, hang out by myself. Then
For
you
sure.
kind of receive like you kind of people don't really respect you. Like we don't
Hmm.
want to play. So for me, I was outcast a little bit. Although we all was cool, like everybody liked each other. You kind of felt the separation where I had to make new friend groups and kind of
Hmm.
have my things to do outside of basketball. Because I knew it wasn't just basketball. Because if you're just doing basketball, you got your academic side that's important, your athletic side. These are your two cores: academics first, then you got to perform your job while you're here. But then what comes with that is you come partying, girls, drugs start popping up. Like you get all this access to stuff because everybody want to hang out with you. Like
Right.
you're the cool guy on campus. So it's being able to cut that stuff out and know where you want to go and align yourself with different kind of people. You can't just hang out with athletes, or else you're just hanging out with athletes unless they're
Right.
progressive ones that are thinking, what are you doing to do this? But the hardest part was learning how to just be okay with like being who I am and developing that person
Hmm.
versus trying to fit in and hang out because that's just an exhausting life. It's fun though, but it just don't. It's a sometime thing in terms of like going out and partying with your friends and having fun. I think that's an experience of college,
For
but it's
sure.
not an everyday thing. It's more of a balancing thing because you can't drink. You're an
Right.
athlete, dude.
Right.
Like we're trying to win here.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Is it was going to the NBA ever something that you had on your horizon or something that you wanted to do? Like like where did you find yourself transitioning throughout school and how did your path change as you were progressing down your path?
Oh man, you just brought my keynote story. So like, because that's literally. Uh, So I never had ambitions to go to the NBA. Never, because I always think about my family. I don't have one, but one day I want to have a family. And I was like, man, like that'd be cool, but I just kind of want to like just be with my family. Like I don't always like the limelight and all that stuff. Like it just enhances as you get to different levels.
For
And then
sure.
secondly, I wasn't that good. Don't tell nobody that though. wasn't that good. I started too late and just wasn't that good. And but I mean, if I had the opportunity, I would have went though. I think anybody would go. But I was not like just an ambitious player to get there. So when honestly, my college career starting in high school was just full of injuries at just not the best times. Like I got 3 screws in one of my knee from when I was in high school. That slowed me down. Like I was a really good player. Got moved up to varsity. Got moved up to the highest level to play in high school. My first year in high school, and that never happens. So I was pumped about that. But then I go and rip my knee up, and so I'm out for 2 years. Then I come back and I got to go JUCO, and JUCO is like high school all over again because you're trying to get picked up by another school. And I go there and I tear my ACL right before the first season, so I had to sit out another year. And then, all glory to God, but I get an opportunity to go try out for UCO, right? You don't get scholarships when you try out for UCO. So I went out and I had like the game of my life. And this was against, at that time, UCL was like number 3 in the nation. They were the top team around. And I go and I take care of their guys. I bust them up on the court. I didn't think I had it in me. I was unconscious. And the reality of it is they didn't have no data on me to see what my consistency was because I was hurt. So I leave that place with a full-ride scholarship. Like, what? At the time, I don't know how big that was, but looking back, you're like, thank you, God. So once I got there, I started thinking of, it was, what was it, physical therapy. Due to my injuries, I met a lot of cool physical therapists, so I want to be that. But no one ever really informed me about the curriculum and how many hours you have to take, how you got to accept it. My roommate is a PT now, and he told me, and I'm like, okay, let's not do that thing because I'm not ready for that. So I enrolled into kinesiology, thinking that I can take my biologies at another time so that I can qualify for PT school. Needless to say, I chose to stay in kinesiology. But the interesting part about it is my junior year, and this is like a big part of like what made me go into business for myself and just understand why it's needed, is because I actually failed the drug test at the Sweet 16. And it wasn't for street drugs. It wasn't for like marijuana or cocaine. It was for caffeine, for pre-workout. I had too much caffeine in my system where they took it as a steroid, like a performance enhancing drug. So that means as a junior, that means that I'm suspended for 1 year. And then, they take a year eligibility. You only get 4, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You only get 4. They're going to take away my senior year, and I'm suspended for 365 days, right? Career over. And I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, what? And I had a red shirt. What a red shirt is you can take your time. You can sit out a year and still have your 1 year eligibility left.
Okay.
So I had that, but it still wouldn't work because they're taking my year eligibility. Like it's no more.
Okay.
So that process changed me because from there, I didn't know what to do. I had a few meetings with the athletic director and the coaches, and they didn't want me there. They're telling me, hey, we need players that can play. It's a business at the end of the day. And I gave them my point of view, and they wanted to send me to USAO out in Chickasha. Didn't want to do that. So I said, hey, I was unaware that these consequences were associated to drinking this, but I did drink it, and, I have to accept the penalties of that. And I feel like, I literally said, like, pretty much, I feel like, God works in mysterious ways. He wouldn't lead me this far just to cut me off and send me back where I came from. So I'm going to just be faithful that everything's going to work out, and I can just go be a student because I'm really enjoying my academics right now. And if I can be a part of the basketball team, great. But if they can go to school without basketball, why can't I? That was my mentality. Like literally, like, and what
For
else can
sure.
I say? Like, I don't want to blame
Absolutely.
nobody. And from that moment, that talk right there, it turned the whole room around. Like I think just being authentic, being humble, being truthful, being okay to be humiliated by your mistakes, it opens up people's like heart to you.
Sort of presented in front of this room and you sort of laid out what was the truth of what happened and you sort of accepted the responsibility. And it sounded like you were sort of trying to be positive in the situation that I feel like a lot of other people would sort of think it was the world falling in on them. And it seemed like they responded pretty positively to it.
Yeah, they did, and I felt that way though. Honestly, I wasn't like, it all's gonna work out. Like I wasn't like that. That week, I think I stopped talking to my mom. My mom called me and she was like, "I ain't gonna." She started getting biblical on me, and I'm like, "Mama, I really don't want to hear this because they talking about they need people that can play, and I can't play right now because I'm ineligible." So yeah, the athletic director, he stands behind me and he says, "You know what? You have whiskers behind your ears." And I quote, and I'm like, "Okay, whatever that means, okay." And they said, "But since you're approaching this in a very mature manner, we want to appeal your case and see if we can win somehow." And I'm like, "Well, I admitted to the crime, like to the situation." So I'm like, "Cool, great." And then my coach steps in and say, "And if it doesn't work out, then I want you to finish your academics here. I'll pay for your scholarship, and we're gonna make sure you finish because you just understood that when that ball deflates, that you got a life after that." And this is before I even got into the industry that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
too. It was just like, dude, actually, it's how I got there because
Mm-hmm.
from there they appealed it. I began to make moves in academia, like big moves. That's when the research happened. And I started traveling to present, doing
Uh-huh.
extremely cool, nerdy stuff. They say, before the year started, they said, "Oh, our appeal worked. You can come back for a year. So you just redshirt and you can come back." So I'm like, "Cool, great. I'm just go study then. I'll see you guys next year pretty much." So I do that. We practice and all that good stuff. Come back next year. Compliance come and like kick me out of practice because I'm not supposed to be there. And they say, uh, like that was a false statement by the drug sports NCAA's. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
whoever made the statement was false. So you are suspended and you are pretty much stripped of your senior year. And what that did though is that opened up the opportunity for me to go into my master's program.
Mm-hmm.
Because that same coach that told me he'd pay for my undergraduate scholarships is like, "Well, this is not fair. You should at least get your senior year." And like me, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I should, but I'm not like this just big basketball enthused at the time.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, I'm like, yeah, okay. But from there, I became a coach with them. And then I was able to go into graduate school. And then since I was doing research, that just enhanced into like other jobs around my academia and then sports. I was a good representative for them. So I would start going to different events and this and that. And it was because I was academically inclined versus like what you asked earlier, how many athletes you think are really academically prepared for it or
Mm-hmm.
are within the system, they understand what they need to do and they're not just burning their scholarship. Well, I was one that was really taking advantage of that, but it was just me. And I can't, but that's just me. You represent like the minority side of it. I don't
For
really
sure.
know what everyone else was doing. Like, but I know with the guys that I was around, that was kind of in my radius, they really wasn't doing much, honestly.
And so, obviously, basketball is a big part of your life. If now you have basketball drills and life skills, what is the purpose of that organization, or like what do you all do within that organization?
So so when I told you I started when I was 15, 16, and before that I was a chubby kid and not coordinated and stuttered and had learning disabilities and asthma, and I could just go on probably
Mm-hmm.
about three more categories. Basketball changed my life, like by going through problems. Like I did not want to go to practice. I did not want to run. I did not want to work out. I did not want to do none of this stuff. But now that I'm an adult, I practice those skills. Like I work out every day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because it helps me like relax. It helps me calm down. Like I'm not in there to get results. Those come inevitably, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm really it calms me down. So the reason why I started BDLS, because I have family that are in similar positions that I was in, if not worse, that should be in some kind of extracurricular activity. So I started that program initially just for them, and then it expanded out to teams and training. And I'm able to deploy different like self-development curriculum to the athletes. So then now we're thinking about life direction and motivation through sports. And there's so many things you can add to that, like mindfulness and things like that. So I want to give the kids an opportunity to get better at something that they think they like. Also an opportunity to build a network of friends that are positive friends. Because with my family, I don't know who they're hanging out with. And I know what high school is. So instead, I want to at least be able to supply some like-minded kids around you, because we pull from all kind of areas. Edmond,
Right.
East Side, Oklahoma City, Del City, UConn. We kind of try to get them all there. And yeah, that's been the main focus is just the community, get the kids around each other, and then develop those kids as much as I can with a high perspective.
What are some skills, I guess, that you believe that you've learned throughout your life that you take into basketball drills and life skills and life direction and motivation for millennials? Like, what are some lessons that you've learned that you think are sort of things that you come back to as you're talking to the kids or as you're talking to people that are part of the programs?
Okay. So I say the first one is habits. Learning how powerful habits are, whether you're using them for good or for bad, building on those habits, turning those habits into routines. It's something that's big that I like to talk about, like routines, like whether it's for your day, whether it's for your sleep, whether it's for your game, whether it's for your test. So that's the first part, will be habits. Then the second top tier would be more so positive thinking, as much as I can stress that. And that's a hard pillar to push, because I don't think a lot of people really believe in positive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's like fairy dust or something. but I try to tell them, I always find a positive niche or situation within your problem, and then find ways to grow from them. And then, I mean, so many of life direct goal setting is probably my biggest one though. Like my habits is there, but goal setting is like, it's the basketball hoop. You want to go dunk that thing, dude. Like, so how do we get there? Like, and then scope. Like the court is your scope, goal setting is your goal. So what's your goal? And then applying like different steps of how to get there. And that was bringing your habits, and that brings in your routines. And if you can have that goal, then it can help you out for the rest of your life. I like to think of it like a preset, like plate, where you're like putting it on to anything you want, like a goal,
right,
broken down in very similar ways across countless communities. So I try to get them in that aspect. Like, you can have it, but you got to be able to set goals. I use a SMART method a lot.
For sure.
But those are like the top three, I would say.
Well, and even, I mean, I think sometimes like with positive thinking, sort of like touching on the fairy dust aspect, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like this thing is going to happen, but sometimes it's just the dialogue that you're saying to yourself. Like, are you saying to yourself, I'm going to fail? Or are you saying to yourself, like, I'm going to succeed? Like,
Right. Beating that voice, quiet in the north. I think we all have that voice, honestly. And something that I try to associate to it is the feeling of when you actually do it and it works. Like, it makes you like really like, this would be a good day. But if you don't, and you just kind of linger in it all day, and you're trying to work and push through stuff, it just piles up on you. And then you start seeing like you get irritable and frustrated and all this type of stuff. And it's generally because, I mean, it goes into that self-esteem arena, where like, I think self-esteem is the promises that you make to yourself and you keep. Mm-hmm. So like, if you're telling yourself, I'm going to wake up in the morning at 6 to go work out for an hour and I'm going to leave, great. Next morning you don't wake up, or maybe you do wake up, but you stayed in the gym for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, which then messes up your day. Now you're drained. Now you're kind of down on yourself. You knew you should have left, or you knew you should have woke up, but you're going to get over it. But then you tell yourself, all right, I'm going to eat this for lunch, and you don't eat that for lunch. And I'm going to call her, and you don't call her. Like, these little different things. And why aren't you doing them? It's usually because something it's telling you to either do something else or it doesn't matter that much. But I've learned that the more you can kind of execute those little tasks, that voice just gets quieter and quieter and quieter.
Absolutely. I see, Antonio, I've tried to set myself up these last few months. I've said, I'm just going to eat pizza, and I go through and I just eat all that pizza. I'm just going to play video games. I play the video games. I'm just, I'm setting myself up for this positive self-esteem because I'm succeeding in all of my very low bar setting goals that I've been doing.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the right way to put it. So it's definitely this. I feel like even before the COVID stuff, I've sort of been in this weird, like, not really satisfied with at least like my workout regimen. Not really satisfied with it. And then this year, I feel like it's sort of all just like fallen down. And so I'm sort of now trying to just figure out like, okay, like I can't necessarily like, the boxes that if you're doing like CrossFit, like the sort of box jumps.
Yeah.
I'm sort of in this place now to where it's like, okay, if my box was like, let's say like a foot high before, like I can't necessarily just guarantee that I'm going to be able to jump right back up to where that was. Like maybe since I've been out of it for so long, I need to set it at like a few inches off the ground or something. Just like start taking that smaller step back to get to where I was. Cause otherwise sometimes it's like you try and take too big of a step and then you be discouraged because you aren't able to achieve that thing that you wanted to do, when in reality that thing that you wanted to do maybe isn't even fair to where your capabilities was in that moment.
Right. And having a good team around you.
Absolutely.
Supporting team, cast, even if it's like, there's a place called Fit 180. I don't want to work out there because their workouts are hard. I went there, I was hurt for like 3 days, and I work out pretty hard. But if I had a problem with working out, though, I would try to be a part of a group like that, because there's no room for self-doubt in there. Like you're going to get your work, you're going to get your results. Versus if you're going by yourself, there's so much room for self-doubt. It's like you're like just whispering in your ear the whole time.
Oh, for sure.
Out. When you're by, or even having just a good friend. That's what pushed me in high school was my friends. They really challenged me because I was always like the stud athlete. And well, you don't want to get better? You don't want to run an extra mile? No, I don't. And then they were like, well, that's because you don't want to get better. You don't. And for some reason, that would always get me up and get the challenge going. But it was because of them like dragging me through.
What, so just two more questions as we're sort of closing out here. Who is someone that you feel like is a big motivator right now in your life for the things that you're wanting to achieve?
Oh man, a big motivator for the things that I want to achieve. That's an interesting question. Because I can think of a lot of people.
Maybe not even necessarily a motivator, but that person in your life right now who's like, you don't want to run that extra mile.
Okay, that person you're talking about. Okay, yeah. I was thinking, okay. I would think I have a mentor, Guy Troop is his name, and he does a lot of work with like NFL teams and stuff. And he's been around me since the NCAA stuff. He wanted to kind of help me through understanding that. And he motivates me because he always gives me like things to eat in terms of business and programs. And early stages, I used to get really down on myself because he like put me in over my head all the time. And I would just be like, man, like, oh my God, no help, no assistance, no guidance. But, 5 years later, I'm still a part of the event. I'm a lot better. So now I'm able to like acquire different teams and then coach them. And I don't know. I just like it when he's around and like he's one of those guys that's not going to give you a thumbs up unless you deserve it. So when I can get him to be like, yeah, man, yeah, like good job there, it really makes me excited to do more and just to expand on opportunities. And then he's in my field, like he's like the guru of self-development in a sense, just he's not a speaker. And it's fun to see like his trends and then able to provide to him. And it's if I had to pick one person that was like my goer, and that's just for work, like in terms of everything else, it just took me consistently doing it. Like working out and stuff. It's just no matter what, like I always put on my Snapchat, I'm at the place that I hate. I don't want to go in here, but I'm just go in here. I'm gonna kill it. And I always say that because I don't think nobody want to work out but me
For
most of
sure.
the time. And I don't really like doing it most of the time. So Guy Troop is my biggest motivator.
And then last question, what is something that you are like, what's something that you feel like you're learning about yourself?
That I'm a lot stronger than I could ever imagine, honestly. Like I think 2019 and even parts of 18. Well, 18 was like discovery. 2019 was kind of like an idle moment for me. Even though I had some pretty cool accomplishments, the thing that I really wanted to do, I just didn't have a heart to do it or the discipline to produce it. And 2020 really gave me time to like go through all that self-doubt and get through all that to finally fourth quarter, a little bit before the fourth quarter of the year, it's like a switch. Like I don't really know what happened because it was like places, things that I was trying to do, I couldn't do them. I couldn't hold myself accountable, but I was aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then late in the quarter, I just started just trying stuff. Like even how I got, with you guys and learning you guys, like that was an email, and that's who I learned from Guy Troop, how to network. And so I would say the biggest thing I've learned in 2020 is like, you don't know how strong you are. Like you don't know how fast a car goes until you push the pedal to the metal. And yeah, that's it right there.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Anybody that is wanting to learn more about Antonio, I will have his websites linked below. I'm also going to give his Facebook and Instagram. You can find him at The Inspirational Speaker, correct? Is that right?
Sure.
Awesome. So The Inspirational Speaker. Antonio, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a great conversation with you. And I hope that you have a great rest of your Sunday as well.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was fun. And whenever you need me, just let me know.
Okay, awesome. I've got a few other things that I know that we didn't necessarily really get to dive deep into. So later on down the road, I'm sure I'm going to be like, Antonio, we've got these other stuff that I want to talk about too. So
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on and joining me.
All right. Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. And I'll see you later.
I'll see you soon.